Well, hello, this is Betty Jean Grant, and we are live at Red, Black, and Green Issue. Like we said last week, we're going to be live every single Wednesday, starting at 7:30, bringing some issues that is pertinent to the community, and you can have feedback. You can call in. No, you can't call in. We're going to work that out next time. But you can text. You can put your comments on this Facebook Live, or you can call me at 602-5877. Send a text, and I'll answer later. But for this show, you can put your comment as they appear, and I read them as they appear. So we're here today, and I just want to let you know we had a beautiful rally down at the Erie County Holding Center. We were there from 4:30 to about 6 o'clock, and a little disappointed. I thought it'd be more people there. I thought more activists would be there, but hey, one person can start or stop a show, and we started the show with a little more than one. So what we're doing today, we're going to be talking about some issues. The Erie County Holding Center is the top of my mind. And so what I'm going to do is switch over to my guests and let them tell you what happened today at the Erie County Holding Center at the protest rally, and some of the things that's very relevant to those who have maybe people who are incarcerated. So we have some guests here, and I just want to flip it over to my guests. First, I'll go to the co-hosting duties, and that is Sherry Sherrill. She's the coordinator, the facilitator for We Are Women Warriors that's bringing you this red, black, and green issues. And she also participated today in the rally at the Holding Center. And next to her, we have a face I've seen on a lot of different organizations, Prisoner People too, and all around the community. And so Sherry's going to be introducing our guests, but I just want to, I can do that. I'll introduce her because we're going to talk about the Erie County Holding Center and the rally we had today. And her name is Donna Robinson, and she's the lead person, I guess, in West New York for the R.A.P.P organization, R.A.P.P, that's Release Aging People from Prison. I hope I didn't mess it up. That's great. Okay, so those who are listening, you can just put your comment down below as you watch, and we're going to talk about some issues. Today we're talking about Erie County Holding Center, incarcerated individual, and what we can do to make their lives better as they wait for trial in the holding center, and once they go to prison, what we can do to get them out there as soon as we can when they have served their time in prison and they're up above a certain age where they should be released. So we'll start with Sherry. Introduce yourself, Sherry, so the audience know who we're talking to.
First of all, I want to say hello, Facebook family. This is Sherry Sherrill from We Are Women Warriors. I'm here today with the guest of honor on today's episode of Red, Black, and Green Issues, Miss Donna Robinson from R.A.P.P organization, R.A.P., and it stands for Release Aging People in Prison. Power to the people, amen. All right, Miss Robinson, today you were at the Western New York Peace Center's rally, and that rally was held in front of the Erie County Sheriff's Office and the Erie County Holding Center. They're two buildings right there together. And the event was well attended, as Betty Jean said, and I just want to just say real quickly, we had some technical difficulties out there because of the wind. So if you're trying to watch that telecast on Facebook, it's a little bit difficult. So you're going to be aided by our description of the event right now. And Ms. Robinson, I just wonder if you could tell us just a little bit about your organization, because what you informed me was very enlightening. I didn't know there's about 10,000 people in jail in the U.S. state of New York, and about 20% of those are age 50 and over, and the majority of those are Black and Latino. Now, that is surprising to me that we'd have 10,000 people in jail in the state of New York. It tells you where we're putting our resources, and your organization is focused particularly, it seems, on getting the sentencing, the jail incarceration of elderly people, getting that wiped out. And you feel, obviously, that it makes no sense to have an elderly person in jail. And can you tell us, in your own words, why that is?
I most certainly can, Sherry. I just want to thank you, Miss Betty Jean Grant, for inviting me to this podcast, because even though people may have heard the name R.A.P.P, they're not familiar with exactly what our agenda is. What our purpose is and what we've been fighting for is this bill. It's called the Elder Parole Bill. What that means is anyone who is 55 years of age and older and have completed 15 years or more of their sentence, they should be allowed to have a fair and just parole hearing by a fair and just parole board. In the past, the brown people, or the underrepresented and the misrepresented of our society, have been given exorbitant sentences.
Yes.
For example, someone in Livingston County just recently was sentenced to 333 years.
That makes no
Wow.
sense.
That just blew my mind, because the lifespan of a human being, especially one who is serving time behind bars, that's no older than 67.
Yes.
But yet we have people who are as old as 85 years old. There's a man, James Moore, right now in Coxsackie, New York, bedridden, can barely get from his bed to a wheelchair, has been incarcerated 67 years.
Wow.
I am 64 years old. When I think about somebody being behind bars, having their manhood taken from them, being mistreated, misrepresented, that breaks my heart. He went to prison when I was 12 years old.
Right.
We have people who were during the Black Panther movement and the Symbionese Liberation Army movement in the 70s when I was in high school, that are still locked up today. That was over 45 years ago, and they're still behind bars, because when they go before the parole board and they are denied parole, that adds an additional 2 years onto their sentence.
Wow.
For example, if you're given a 50-year to life sentence and you go before the parole board after your 50 years and you don't get out, they give you that rubber stamp, which is based on what they look at in black and white, what they read on the paper. Oh, he killed 2 police officers, stamp. He will never return to society. It doesn't, New York State doesn't have a death penalty per se.
Right.
They did away with that. But this is death by mass incarceration.
Yes, it is.
Let me ask a question. Now, when they go before parole, does the testimony or the feelings of the family members, do they testify to say, I don't care if this person gets parole or not, or this person killed my relatives, he never should be out of prison? Does it have any bearing on whether they get parole or not?
I'm going to say yes, because in this case where I was speaking about James Moore, he has a PhD, by the way. At 85 years old, he mastered mostly all of the challenges that the prison system put before him.
Right.
The head of his class, etc., etc. There is a district attorney in Monroe County. Her name is Sandra Doherty. Every time he comes before the parole board, every time he gets to go those 2 years, she goes online and puts up a petition which is full of lies and fallacies to malign this man's chances, and she has people to electronically sign this petition. The last time he was denied, she'd gotten over 1,238 signatures. She keeps regurgitating this horrific crime. Yes, what he did was horrific. That was so long ago. You cannot keep persecuting the family of these victims.
Let me ask you this question, because you raised a very interesting point there. In your opinion, with your experience having so much exposure in this subject matter area, do persons convicted of violent crimes, is it typical for them to experience that the longer they stay in jail, if they get a long jail sentence, is it typical of them to have an epiphany where they are legitimately and truly, honestly sorry for what they've done? Is it possible to get rehabilitated in jail? Is my question.
It is, and I have seen it with my own eyes. I've seen men who have spent 38, 45 years or more behind bars, and for whatever reason, been given clemency, or they've passed the parole board and have come out. Some of them are former Black Panther leaders from the 70s. And when I see these men, they have master's degrees. There's no correction in the correctional facility. They take it upon themselves to start their own programs,
Self-help.
to rehabilitate themselves. They start a lot of programs. They mentor the younger individuals that come in. For example, in Bedford Hills, which is a maximum women's facility in New York State, there's 3 women's facilities. Bedford Hills is the maximum. Across the street from Bedford Hills, there's Taconic, which is a minimum, and up in upstate New York by us is Albion, and it is a minimum facility for females. The women there help each other. There was a young lady, Val Gator, 61 years old, the longest serving woman in the prison system of New York. Was sentenced to 50 years to life, was not going to be eligible for parole for 50 years. She came in as a young woman, August 13th, 1979. She mentored all the young women that came in, including my daughter. My daughter was one of the mentees. She took her under her wings. She showed her how to survive in this life. It's a different world there.
Right.
A lot of women, when she passed away on August 13th, 2019, which is very ironic, that she came in the same day in 1979 and God gave her freedom.
Right.
Oh.
Sherry, you want to give her a first? You can go ahead and talk so she can turn it off. It might ring again. Yeah, so let me ask you this. So you're a transplanted Buffalonian. Could you give a brief history of, where you were born and raised and why we're looking at you here in Buffalo, New York?
Well, I was born and raised in New Jersey, 1955, when civil rights was just being spawned in America.
And people were active and people were wanting to be involved, right?
Yes. Martin Luther King.
Different times now.
He didn't even volunteer. They volunteered him to take on the fight with Rosa Parks in Mississippi.
Right.
Emmett Till was killed that year. My mother never lets me forget what happened in August of 1955 when I was born. I raised my children in Buffalo. I moved up here when my baby was 2 months old in February of 1982. I went to Medaille College. I worked sometimes 2 or 3 jobs.
Right.
My last employment, I worked for the cable company. My lifelong dream was always to be an educator, but as life would have it, God had another plan for me. I became sick in 2000, disabled, on the list for liver transplant, sugar diabetes, losing my vision, sarcoidosis, and that shut me down for about 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And just as I was starting to get myself together, my daughter's always been my rock. She was the wind beneath my wings. She took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. We started to do stand-up comedy together, and then the rug was pulled out from under us.
Wow.
As the case with most women, especially young women now, you get caught up with a man who doesn't mean you any good. You get your emotions go awry, and you find that your mind flips. You do things that normally you wouldn't do. So what happened was my daughter was involved in a bad relationship, a love triangle. She was trying to get out of it, but he just kept coming back and harassing her. One thing led to another. She says, I never meant to hurt anybody.
Right.
I threw a match into the waste paper basket. It didn't light. I went home. A couple other times, she said, I looked up at the chimney. It was in October. And I saw smoke coming from the chimney. I thought his house was on fire. It's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. She's blowing up his phone. He doesn't answer. So she calls the woman's phone, who's been harassing her.
Right.
And the woman answers. Now, they come over there. I don't know if the house was on fire or not. But what I believe, the house was not on fire. She saw the smoke coming from the chimney and thought it was, and he was selling drugs in the neighborhood. My daughter didn't do drugs, didn't drink excessively or anything. A glass of wine after work maybe, but nothing excessive. He had evidence in the basement that needed to go away because he was going to do federal time.
Right.
I believe that him and that woman started that fire to collect insurance money because it was a rooming house.
Right.
And he thought that he could profit. My daughter had nothing to profit. She worked from the age of 14 up until her incarceration. At HSBC, M&T Bank, she divested and took her 401k out of HSBC. She had more money than Carter had liver pills. More to lose than she had to gain. And she said that. And the judge, when she sentenced her, said, what you did was not commit murder. It was stupid, but it wasn't murder. And she apologized because all she ever tried to do was advocate for those men who he had been mistreating and abusing.
So I'm understanding that this is a very extremely personal topic for you. And so you're in the correct area in life. You know, it's important when we're going to have a push for improvement against the negative conditions and that harm and impact our community, that we get bodies in place. You know, we get people to the struggle. You know, it's hard, and we saw that downtown earlier today. I'm going to shift a little bit. Our Facebook family, we're talking to Miss Donna Robinson. She is the executive director of R.A.P.P organization, and that is Release Aging People in Prison. That's what that stands for. Today we were downtown at the rally in front of the holding center, and that rally was protesting against the high number of alleged suicides, I'll say it that way, that have happened in the Erie County Holding Center. Now, Sheriff Timothy B. Howard, the Sheriff of Erie County, he's had about 14 years to try to get his job right, to try to get it done correctly. But what we were protesting today, I was there firsthand, so you're not hearing this from hearsay. We were protesting the high number of deaths that have been happening, and it just seems like a steamroll effect. First it was 14, then it was 20, then it was 21, it's 23, and 25. Now we're up to 28, and I heard a number out there today that the number might be actually 31, that it might be actually three lives that are unaccounted for or that have not been accounted for yet. Now, when you were there at the rally today, I heard the comments that you made, and when it intrigued me when you talked about your organization, because when I look at how much money you were quoting, how much money it costs to keep someone incarcerated in the state of New York. You know, it costs about $60,000. Typically, that's how much it costs. But for a senior person, an elderly person, it costs much more than that. And so there's a drain that's happening, and it's money that could be used in other places for social programs, after-school programs, and other areas. It's being used to keep people incarcerated that your organization feels would be better served being released, because elderly people have the lowest rate of recidivism when it comes to committing additional offenses after being released and then being sent back to prison. So you're saying it doesn't make sense on a couple of fronts. It doesn't make sense in terms of the social impact, taking people out of life and putting them in a cage and leaving them there, basically to if they don't employ self-help efforts on their own initiative, leaving them there to basically just die. And you're also saying that there's another drain that happens fiscally, financially, economically, and that's something that impacts taxpayers.
It really does, because the cost that it is to maintain a senior person is twice what it costs to maintain a younger person in prison. That $120,000 a year per person could be very well spent to put in employment or skills opportunities out here for the young people so that they don't have to do what they do to get money to survive and end up behind bars. It's a travesty to think that if you could save money by letting 10 people who you know at 75 years old, 80 years old, after spending that much time behind bars, and if they do go back, it's on a technicality.
Oh.
And just let them come home and mentor into the community. We have so many individuals who have come back into society and started their own social service agencies and activist agencies. The founder of our organization, R.A.P.P, was formerly incarcerated. My executive director, Jose Saldana, now will tell you he was incarcerated for over 37 years. No finer man have I met. They come out and they are strong, intelligent, good men. Jerome Wright, right here in Buffalo, New York, representing HALT, to stop solitary confinement. How can you confine a human being to a cage for 40 years and expect them to come outside of that box, that cage, and then to be able to interact with other human beings? You've pushed their food up under the door, sometimes even with a broom. The noise is inside. Jerome has a box that he takes around to different places so that you can see what the solitary confinement is like. Right now, to this day, I have not been able to step inside that box. The noises that people contend with while they're there, the guards banging on the gates, people yelling and screaming constantly, that would break down the strongest of human beings.
It's
But,
not the environment.
Right. I want to say, too, that you affiliated with Prisoner Peoples, too.
I began with Prisoners of People, too, with Karima Amin and
Right.
Baba Ng.
Right. I just want to say that why I brought it up, because Baba Ng was one of the person that you would have been fighting for had he not been released from prison. You know, I won't tell his age, but he's definitely past 55, past 65. Okay, he's pushing upwards to the other numbers, but he has come out. Probably because he studied a lot, he mentored a lot, and he taught a lot in prison, so he was preparing himself for his eventual release. And he came out and he's done so much with prison reform. I think now he's working with the Community Health Center, teaching about prison reentry programs and also restorative justice. And so that's what can happen when we give people a chance to come out. Why should we spend $25,000, $30,000 to incarcerate them? We can get them out, let them get their own job, and they can take care of themselves. Because if you're in prison, you're not contributing to your own well-being. We're paying more for you in prison than we'll pay if you were going to college, and there's something wrong with that.
It is. And no finer human being, I can't say it enough. Baba Ng is a fine example. Jose Saldana, Terrell Muhammad, Robert Seth Hayes.
Right.
These people went through the struggle for us. What they fought for, what they were incarcerated for 35, 40 years was to lay down the foundation for us African American people. Be self-sufficient. Build your own community. Have your own health services. Before, in prison, there was no such programs to combat HIV and AIDS. They had to bring in those programs.
Wow.
They had to start them for themselves. Because New York State, they were, no, put them over there by themselves. That's not correcting or rehabilitating anyone.
Right.
And I know that they deserve a second chance. They have repented. Who are we to judge? I say only God can judge us. 9 times out of 10, I look at it this way. If you've been incarcerated for a massive amount of years, you've been in a controlled environment.
Right.
You've been behind bars. There's minimal amount of carbon monoxide pollution. The germs that you get in the air, the airborne germs, There's a limit to those. Once you come back out into society, you have carbon monoxide, you have all these chemicals that you're breathing in, people with the different germs and everything. How long do you think that person will last?
Let me ask you this too. What can we do as a community, and what can the family of those incarcerated individuals, and what can they do to facilitate them getting released on parole?
What you can do is there's a lot of organizations out here. R.A.P.P is not the only one. Prisoners of People too. HALT, HALT, CAIC, CAIC. You have to get involved. You have to do something, say something. But most importantly, you have to get out here and vote. You have to elect people that look like you and I, that think and have the same morals and values. Because if you're paying taxes, you're their boss. You're the one that says, look, you have to get in here and stop this because... And a lot of the faith-based organizations, how can you stand up in a pulpit on Sunday and preach about, oh, God's going to bless you with health and wealth, but you're sitting there on the bench wondering how your child is doing, how your husband is doing, how your wife is doing behind bars. And sometimes if you're fortunate enough, after church, you have to go and do that visit. I did that with my grandmother for my uncle, who was addicted to heroin in the 60s. But now, it's an opioid epidemic.
It's a crisis now, isn't it? It's a sickness now.
You know why it's a crisis now? Because it's moved from the inner city where they drop those drugs in, and it's spread to the outskirts, to the suburbs where Johnny and Sally and Sue are sitting up there stealing their mother's money and coming into the city to get their drugs and dying. So you have to become active. I was not an activist. I never thought that that's what I would be doing. But never say what you won't do.
That's true.
If you're confronted with these obstacles, this is like the elephant in the room. You know it's there, but nobody wants to address it or talk about it. Nobody is immune from going to jail. We see it every day. There's judges, sheriffs, entertainers, athletes. It can happen to anyone at any given moment. Educate yourself. Know what the system is about and try to reform it now before it does the home invasion and comes in your house like it did mine. Because this is an education for me as well. So my mission is to educate people. Get on board. We have a bus that we're filling up to go to Albany on January. If you don't start listening to what we're saying and addressing issues like us, you can go too.
Let me take let's touch on that again, because that was very powerful. What you're saying is very powerful, and I surely do appreciate it. Now, let's say, for instance, hypothetically speaking, I am a young woman. I live in the city of Buffalo, and say a family member of mine is incarcerated, and I want to know, and they're there for, they have a life sentence, but or maybe they have a 20-year sentence, and they're going before the parole board. I want to think positively and progressively, so I'm thinking to myself, what can I do to help that relative? Let me tell you what I would think to do, and you can then tell me one in addition you can think of that would be helpful. First of all, you said get involved, tune in. The first thing that you can do is to tune in, is to acknowledge reality for what it is, to learn what those terms are so that you are aware, and then to tailor a plan. There are lots of groups such as R.A.P.P, and Prisoners Are People Too, and R.A.P.P is Release Aging People in Prison. There's groups like that I could join and get involved with, so that I would be close to the source of good information and how-tos. And what I would also think to do, I would think to take my plight and the dilemma of the approaching parole board meeting or confrontation. I would think to go to maybe my elected official and to tell them about what is happening and what is upcoming, and I would ask for a letter of support, perhaps from my pastor. I would also think to go to persons who know that family member, who knew them before they were in jail, maybe some teachers, just associates, friends, especially those working in responsible locations in society that are employed or that are self-employed. And I would think to get letters of support for them, and I would also think to be encouraging my own self to that family member, which would mean being in constant contact with them so that feelings of isolation don't set in, and so that they can maintain that connection to the community through me. And I would also I think what also I would do, I would add this in there, I would pray very fervently, and I would ask that family member to put their best foot forward at the parole meeting, because I know it's sort of like a confrontational setting also, where like things get said that might put the family member on the defensive. I would say, just take it as it's par for the course, and like you're riding out a storm in that parole meeting. And is there anything else you could think that if I, as a member of a family that had someone that was approaching a parole hearing, anything else that I could do that could be helpful?
Well, what I've been doing is encouraging my daughter to get involved in as many programs
Excellent.
as she can while she's in Bedford Hills. Now, Ms. Val mentored her as the photographer, which they call the click there. So she came in contact with a lot of the visitors, so she got to know a lot of the people that came in there. And she's taking college courses.
That's what I'm about to ask too. So she is
Yes,
taking college courses.
She's taking college courses. She's very active in the church there. She goes to church religiously. She's one of the prayer warriors. She encouraged the other women because she is 44. A lot of the other young women that come in, they respect her. They call her Miss Robinson. My daughter has very good sense of humor, so she says she's broken down barriers with some of the more stricter officers there, so where that they show her favor. When it comes to the parole board, the only thing I can tell you is the Parole Preparation Project, who we work in conjunction with at R.A.P.P on 168 Canal Street. They have lawyers and students from Columbia Law School that pick apart your brief. Make sure that when you go before the parole board, your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, and you have the best chance of making that parole board.
So also maybe contacting colleges and community colleges and universities, and even Googling for maybe the Innocence Project and any kind of similar organization, entity, or group. Like you're saying, college students, a lot of times the legal society at colleges will have the law department, they'll have a group of students, and they take on Innocence Project type initiatives to help people that can't afford to purchase legal representation. And they've been highly effective. There was a young man, Valentino Dixon, from the Western New York area, and he was sent to prison. And Betty Jean, I know that you were working closely with a group that was supporting Mr. Dixon prior to you becoming released from prison. Can you tell us just briefly about that? How did he get free?
Well, like he said with his exhibitors at the Birchfield Penny, I'm going to get a plug on that. He drew his way to freedom. He was incarcerated. He's an artist, and what he did was like to draw. And so one day the warden, which made his rounds, passed by his cell, noticed him drawing. That warden was a lover of golf, and he asked could he draw a particular golf course. And so Valentina said, I'll try. So the warden came by, gave him a couple of books, and he was able to draw those golf courses in 2 weeks. And so when the warden came by and saw it, he was very flabbergasted, and he was able to get him other commissions, have other people see their work. And so then Valentina started looking at the golf courses in those Golf Digest magazines. He looked at the articles, started reading the article. And one article was about a guy who had been incarcerated, who was released. He was charged with killing his mother and father, which he was innocent. Innocent Project got him out of. And so he was able to read that story and write to this gentleman. The gentleman put in touch with a lawyer, and the lawyer kind of sat on the case for a couple of years. I'm talking about 2012, 2013. This is how long this case has been to the success it is right now. But the guy who got out of prison was an internship at Georgetown University. And somehow Valentina Case got to this particular professor who had 4 students from, not from the United States, from England, I think Scotland, and a couple other countries. He gave them that assignment to see what can they do to help them get released. And so based on that, based on Detective John Flynn coming into office and willing to look at new evidence, he was able to appear before the court and get himself out of prison for a crime he did not commit. So there's a lot based on his talent, a lot of based on him being persistent, people willing to give him a chance, and finding new evidence that was at the trial, but they never called witnesses who could have exonerated Mr. Dixon, never called them, so he was able to call them as new evidence. So maybe God was looking at this, said, had they testified in 1998, they couldn't testify now. And so it was a long, drawn-out story, and you can just go on any of the website and find out what happened. But it took luck, persevering, him being steadfast, people willing to give him a chance to prove his innocence, and by the grace of God, everything was done.
Ms. Robinson, so that comment that you had made about when I said, what else can people do proactively that can help aid the process of gaining approval from the probation board, you said have the tenacity and have the self-discipline to get involved in as many activities inside the prison facility as possible, because you never know where a break might come, where a window of opportunity might open up. Now, I want to ask you, because right now we've seen some very, very high-profile police brutality incidents that have been happening all over the country. I want to ask your opinion as far as the community and policing affairs and relations go. What is it that has gone wrong in the paradigm of the community and the police? What has gone wrong? I remember growing up, and I didn't grow up that long ago, but long enough ago, that over the past 30 years, I am hearing more about police brutality than ever before in my life. And it seems you can't let a week doesn't go by without a police officer drawing a gun. It seems, with question as to whether or not that was even necessary for him to take or to escalate the incident, whatever it may have been, that far. What is it that has gone wrong, either in society or within police departments or within the community? What is it that has taken place that might be able to explain the rise in police brutality?
Well, from my perspective, there's been such a breakdown in the community getting along with the police. Before, you used to look at police to be there to protect and serve you. But now it's more like, I'm afraid. You're afraid to be pulled over by the police. Mm-hmm. You're afraid to interact with them. And you're definitely afraid to give them any type of information that might label you as a snitch. I said that once number 45, I don't even like to say his name out loud, mm-hmm. was elected. He set the tone mm-hmm. for a lot of people in America who had perhaps been sitting back on their hands and just waiting for the opportunity to show themselves. As Maya Angelou says, if somebody tells you who they are, mm-hmm. believe what they say.
The first time.
Don't keep going through this again. Oh no, maybe they were just pulling my. No, that's not how any mm-hmm. of this works. So once he put the platform out there, like, these people don't matter, that make America great again. Mm-hmm. And I'm still trying to figure out, when was America ever great? I'm mm-hmm. thinking of my mother was born during the Depression. Her mm-hmm. grandmother was born, my grandmother was born during slavery. Mm-hmm. When was America great for mm-hmm. African American people?
That is a good question.
People of color. So once he came into office, everybody seemed to put an S on their chest. I even noticed that right here in Buffalo on the day after his election.
Yes.
White people, I'm just going to say it, mm-hmm. they stuck their chests out like, oh, we're taking back over again. What are you taking over?
Make America great again.
Make America. When was it ever? What are you
Not for us.
What
Not
are you
for
doing?
us.
You're making bad matters worse. And it was only a matter of time till we're at the point now where we don't know whether to boo-boo or go blind, as the saying goes. You don't know what's the lesser of two evils. You know, if he's impeached, what is going to be the status of America? You know.
So you're in your opinion, in your observation, I would say, your learned opinion, racism is one of the driving forces behind the decimation of community and police relations. You know, we had a situation in Texas recently. It was a man was murdered, shot to death in his apartment by a police officer off duty. She claimed that she thought she was in her own apartment, so she goes around shooting people if they go in her apartment, I guess what she's saying. But that situation down in Texas inflamed racial animosity, and also because of some comportment that happened right around sentencing time, also got the community's ire up and woke the community up a little more, although the murder did by itself. I want to ask you a question. Should the community view the police as our friend?
As what?
As our friend.
Oh, friend. Okay.
Should the Black African American community in Western New York or anywhere else in America, should we view the police as our friend? And I ask that question because that particular entity sometimes acts as if it cannot do its job fully without the community's participation. Yet that same entity is brutalizing and damaging the community's civil, human, and constitutional rights. And if the police are not our friend, if we cannot view them as our friend, if we need to teach our children to be afraid of the police and to be leery and to be careful about getting involved and interacting with the police, what does that bode moving forward for community and police relations? So I guess what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is what, if anything, can be done to improve the relationship between the community and the police?
Okay,
are they friend or are they foe?
Let me just say that before you answer, I just want to put my 2 cents because I've been kind of quiet today. Your question originally was, should we view the police as our friend?
Yes.
I said yes until they do something to show us that they're not our friend. As we cannot judge everybody that looks a different way or the same way or a different race, ethnicity, we can't do it but for police, because just think what this society would be without a police officer.
Without them
It would be anarchy. And I just saw the Joker movie last night, and we don't want that Joker scenario in this country because it shows what can happen when there's no police around. So for me, the police is my friend until he shows me that he is not.
Okay.
He is my friend until he does something that is that's being biased, discriminatory, or prejudiced. Then I have a problem. I have not seen good people in all good people in one race. I have not seen all bad people in another race. Because just like society, we got good and bad. So my whole point is I would like to start with a positive. If I was raising you guys, and I did raise you, that the police is your friend until he does something that shows that he is not. Because we want to be in a position that we can go to a police officer. I know we had a couple of young girls being murdered. 3 years old and 5 years old.
Yes, and 7.
Yeah, and 7. And that is not police officer, in my estimate, doing these murders. These are people who look like them, and 9 times out of 10, some of them might be related to them or have a connection to the mother or the father.
Black on black crime.
No, I'm saying that I don't want to do black on black because it's black on black because black folks are in vicinity of other black people. So the same thing, we said black on black crime. Out there in Cheektowaga, they're saying white on white crime. And Amherst is saying white on white. And so where you had the most people, you're going to have the most crime. And so it's not black on black. It is, unfortunately, people preying on other people who are vulnerable. Okay, so you can answer the question now.
Are the police friend or foe?
friends that are police officers. How we can bridge that gap is that more of our friends apply for and become police officers.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that way,
You know, I have a problem with this court, so
would
this.
be able to.
And also, when good cops don't speak up about bad cop behavior,
Right.
it reinforces the bad element in the police establishment, that corruption, and it perpetuates it for further generations. You know, it's been a pleasure talking to you. How much time do we have?
I don't know. I'm not. I can't see my clock here, so I'm not sure what time it is. You know what time it is,
We
Don?
have about 15 minutes left.
Okay.
And I want to just go, Benny, is there anything in particular?
Yes, I'm going to focus on a little bit about the rally today, and I know you said it was a good rally, a good crowd, but I'm disappointed because there's a lot of people who have been oppressed in that holding center. A lot have been abused, a lot of them have been ignored, and a lot of them have been mistreated. And so when we have an issue that we can, by showing our support and by letting Sheriff Howard, because he was on Spectrum TV interview today, and he said, I see nothing wrong, I did nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong, and I'm going to be here until I'm not here. And so, make a long story short, if we're really serious that we need a change in that holding center, we got to do more than talk among ourselves. We're going to have to come and march in the cold, in the wind, in the rain, in the snow, whatever it takes to let him know that we're serious. Because if you do, and I call it, and I know a lot of people call it too, armchair activists. Armchair activists. You're sitting there, you're in front of your Facebook screen, or you're sitting in front of your TV, and you can tell how bad the world is, what's wrong with it. But by the time you go out there to let people know this by your presence, and by your voice, and by writing, or by voting, we don't do this. So we have to really do more than just mouth, and we got to really put our mouth where our money is. And we got 75 inmates in that, not inmates, the detainees, because they had not been convicted yet. And we have 75 detainees in the holding center. We should have a representative from each one of those family members at that rally if they know that was happening. But that's not happening. People expect other people to do their job for them, or they don't expect to help anybody else unless they're directly involved. And, you know, I have 3 girls, and guys with them, they've been good, law-abiding citizens, and so I don't expect to be going anywhere to get them out of jail, whatever, but I understand things happen. You can be jaywalking, get arrested, and be at Erie County Holding Center. You could be walking out of a store with a can of beer, forget to get the bag, and be arrested for public intoxication. So there's many reasons why you can be in a holding center, and some of them is because you have been unfairly or wrongly charged, or you might be served with a minor traffic violation. So everybody in the holding center, they're not murderers. A lot of them are not even, I call them felons. And when they go to court, that is held out. But until we have people willing to help, willing to march, willing to demonstrate. You know, last week we spent what? We did the video show, right, Sherry?
Yes.
We did a video show, then we was rallying. So last Wednesday, I spent at least 6 hours on the issue of the Erie County Holding Center and letting people know what's happening. And I don't have a child in that holding center. Yeah, but many of those who do, they don't even say, thank you, Mrs. Grant, which you know, or thank you, Mrs. Robinson, or thank you, Mrs. Sorrell. You know, they don't do that. So I would say I would like to see more citizen participation, because Sherry and I had said this, and was it you, Sherry? Said that if we had to rely on the people of today for starting the civil rights movement of the 1950s, 1960s, we would be in bad shape.
But if we were rallying people together to go out and to the Bills game or to the
yes.
Steelers game.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Right. En masse. En masse.
The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Is an elder statesman in this community, even in his posture now as an ancestor that is deceased, having been brutally, savagely, viciously taken away from this community. And he said something in every single speech that he gave, and he gave very many of them. One thing he said in particular I think is apropos to share right now with Facebook family. He said, do not fall victim to a superficial reality or a dangerous optimism. And we can correlate that to the reluctance that some people have to getting involved. You know, it takes energy, it takes stamina, it takes self-discipline to support a social movement. It only takes a mouth on hinges that function to complain. In other words, it's easier to complain than it is to do something about it. But if all you're going to do is complain, then you are becoming part of the problem. Because as the problem gets tested and the waters get tested and the envelope gets pushed, but there's no tide that overtakes the problem or solution that becomes offered, you're building up the resistance to that solution. So what we have to do as a community is to do more than complain. Complaining is just the first part of addressing a problem and acknowledging it. That's only step one. Step two is to begin to think constructively about ways to defeat that problem. And then step three is how to perpetuate the positive developments that you've been able to gain. None of those things happen without a direct act of will that an individual has to do something and be part of something that is bigger than themselves. And a lot of times the problems are bigger than we are, but the solution is bigger than we are too as individuals. For a community improvement to happen, and for a Negro improvement to happen, and for African American progress to happen, there has to be a collective effort. And I'm increasingly hearing this, Betty Jean, I don't know if you are, but people are asking the question, what do we need to do in order to have solidarity? How can we unify? How can we unite? Unfortunately, we have waited until the decimation of the Black Business Foundation and establishment that we had here in Western New York to begin to seriously ask those questions. Unfortunately, we've waited until child abuse and child neglect and child murders are rampant and out of control all over the country before we've begun to ask that question. Unfortunately, we've waited until senior citizens comprise 20% of the, overwhelmingly 20% of the prison population without an end in sight.
Senior citizen, 20%?
Yes, they're 20%
one
of
in
the
five
prison population.
people.
And unfortunately, we've waited until the utter ruin, darn near, of the Black family. But people, nonetheless, we don't get to say what the terms and conditions are going to be before we reach that bottom, that point of no return, and then finally stand up. But we do have as a community, have to stand up. We do. And what we have to do as a community is when you see groups such as Release Aging People in Prison, when you see groups such as We Are Women Warriors, when you see groups such as Prisoners Are People Too, when you see groups like Stop the Violence, when you see groups like Buffalo United Front, when you see all of these groups happening,
MVP, don't leave them out.
most valuable parents, don't sit back and be an armchair civil rights activist. Get out there. It only takes a moment. Some of these rallies are over in minutes. I'm not trying to be discouraging of the people that are conducting the rally, but some of these rallies only take minutes out of your day. And is not the improvement of our community, is not the upliftment of our people worth minutes out of your day? You'll feel so much better when you do take part. And Miss Donna Robinson.
Let me ask you something before you do it. I know Sherry can talk. Yes, you can talk. Boy, I wish I was gifted. You both can talk, I tell you, so I can just keep my mouth shut. But I want to ask you a question. 20% of the prison population, 20% is senior citizens?
One in five people incarcerated in the state of New York is over the age of 55.
Is that because they're committing crime at an older age, or are they being held longer?
They're being held longer and they're aging in prison. It's such as Miss Valerie Gator. She came in under the age of 20. She died at the age of 61.
Oh, wow.
41 years behind bars. She was in the Puppies for Veterans program, the photographer, started a lot of different programs, mentoring. When they had the memorial service, when we had a memorial service for her, the Daily News covered it. And the women that came up to our office and stood up for her and represented for her, saying how she was an icon, a queen.
Right.
Even the superintendent that was there when she came in 1979, who's still alive, came to her funeral. This is the magnitude of the type of aging people we have behind bars. They don't belong there. They need to be put back into the community. What time they have left to do something fruitful and productive. And the thing that we have to do is contact our senator. Mine is Tim Kennedy. I've met with his staff. I've seen his staff out and about. We have to get him on board, co-sponsor these bills.
Right.
Co-sponsor the elder parole bill, S.2144. Sign, co-sponsor the fair and timely parole release.
Now, you talking about bills. Are those bills in the assembly? They need Senate support or where?
They need Senate support. They're going through the assembly now. They're in the Senate.
Right, oh, wow.
And the elder parole 2144 was right there on Cuomo's desk. All he had to do was say, okay, and that would have been done at the last legislative
And he didn't do
session.
that?
No. Stewart Cousins stonewalled us. Andrea Stewart Cousins stonewalled us at the last minute. And we have been fighting and burning the candle at both ends, marching, rallying. I know I'm asking a lot for people to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and get on this bus and go to Albany. But trust me, that was the best experience, the most, like you said, the most heartwarming experience that I had. I've never been to the state capitol. And to see that opulence, the money that you spend on those buildings, and people in my neighborhood are starving.
Yes.
They're going hungry. Yes, I'm going to kick in the doors. I'm going to come right in your face. This is unconscionable. How can you sleep at night? And I get it, because a lot of them push back with, well, someone killed somebody in my family, my best friend. Well, guess what? I'm a victim too, believe it or don't. Someone murdered someone in my family 3 or 4 times over. But I had to forgive that person. If I want forgiveness for my son, my daughter, your husband, your wife, I have to forgive the person that took my loved one away. It's only right.
Well, you're a bigger person than I am, because I tell you, I don't have a problem with forgiveness per se, but I do have a problem with violent crime. But y'all, I just want to say your group sounds like a twofer, the work that you do, because you're not only concerned with prison reform, but when you're talking about people that are sentenced when they're younger and then remaining in prison until they become a senior citizen, your group also works in the area of sentencing reform too.
Exactly.
Because you don't want to see people given these exorbitant sentences that go on and on and on and accomplish death by incarceration. We're talking with Donna, Miss Donna Robinson of the Release Aging People in Prison, the R.A.P.P group. And I just want to make sure, if people want to get in touch with you, you're saying that your group is going to be going in January to Albany to take this right to Governor Cuomo's front door. How can people get in touch with you?
We have a website, rapcampaign.com, and also you can go on Facebook, capital R, capital A, capital P, capital P. We're out of New York City. You can contact any member. They will get in contact with me if you're in Western New York. We have a regional director in the Albany area if you're down there. We just took on another regional organizer for Long Island, and our base is in Manhattan, where we cover the 5 boroughs. So we're trying to reach out to as many people as we can, because we know that there's strength in numbers. No more death behind bars. This is unconscionable. It's got to come to an end, and only we can stop it, because nobody's going to care but us.
Absolutely. And also, I know you say you reached out to Senator Kennedy. You haven't got a definitive answer from him yet, right?
Not yet. I've contacted him and his staff. Look, convince him to co-sponsor this bill. There's been other senators, Gianaris, just co-sponsored the bill.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Gianaris just co-sponsored the bill a couple days ago. You can go online, New York State Senate. Find out who your senator is. Write that person. Let them know what your issues are and what you want them to do for you.
Right. Now you reach out to Senator Jacobs, Chris Jacobs?
Chris Jacobs?
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, because he's on the other side of Main Street. He's a senator over there. So maybe they can do a joint senator co-sponsorship.
And
Absolutely.
you can look on the senator's website and find out which senators have co-sponsored the bills, which
Right.
ones are on board. But I believe that it's a lack of education. They think that, oh, this bill is going to just open up the floodgates and let all the prisoners out. No, what we're saying is don't look at what they did. Because there's many circumstances. A lot of women are incarcerated because they fought their attackers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Look at the person they are now, 30 years, 40 years, 50
Right, you know,
years later.
Santonia Brown from Dallas, Texas, I think it is.
Yes.
She was a human trafficker. Somebody had her as a sex slave, and she killed her abuser, the guy, yes, and served 15 years for self-defense. And so finally she got out, and I think she got a pardon. Somebody gave her a pardon, if I'm not mistaken. But just think about that. She spent 15 years because she was defending herself against being raped.
I see a lot of women in Bedford Hills that have defended themselves.
Uh-huh.
Not only them, but their co-defendants.
Right.
And that could be brothers and sisters. We have families of women confined together, mothers and daughters, sisters, grandmothers and grandchildren are co-defendants, and they're locked up together. And it breaks my heart when I go sit in that visiting room and they get visits. You can't cross visit. So you got a little baby coming in here. She sees her grandmother over there, but she can't speak to her grandmother because she's visiting her mother.
Right. Well, Cynthia, we'll give you 2 minutes to kind of wrap up and let people know how we can get in touch with you. We know we're going to be, I just want to say this in case I forget, at the Erie County Holden Center next Wednesday. We're going to be down there protesting 4:30 p.m. For those who didn't come this week or those who want to join us next week, please come down at 4:30 at 20 Delaware Avenue at the Erie County Holden Center for a protest rally about the unfair treatment and homicides and suicides in that Holden Center. So we give you 2 minutes to wrap it up. Then Sherry, you're going to tell them about future programs, how they can get in touch with us. Okay. You got it?
Okay, well, first of all, I would like to invite you, I know this is short notice, but on Friday the 25th, the group Vocal, Voices of Community and Activists and Leaders, will be here with me, R.A.P.P, in Buffalo at the Frank E. Merriweather Jr. Library on Jefferson Avenue near Utica between 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock. I'm not expecting you to sit there for 3 or 4 hours, but come and voice your opinion, get educated, get to speak to some of the people from the community, and find out what else you can do to help. Lunch will be served.
Oh, lunch will be served. That's great. What's the date again?
It's October 25th, Friday.
That's Friday, okay.
Between 11 and 2 at the Frank E. Merriweather Library on Jefferson Avenue near Utica.
Okay, so you said come and be heard. Now, these from the speakers are those who will come will be speaking.
Well, we will have some speakers. I will be speaking. Miss Kim Smith from Vocal, New York. She will be speaking. There will be someone else on the dais, but we will be asking questions. And if you show up, we want you to speak because you're an advocate and an activist in this community for decades.
Thank you.
I have admired you and worshipped you from afar, Miss Betty Jean Grant, and I always said if I had a little bit older sister, that I would have wanted you to be her.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And that's the truth. So,
now, she said a little bit older, so I like that too.
Look, I'm getting ready to collect my full Social Security benefits. Don't play with me.
And that's something to look forward to too, because for a benefit, you work as long as you can too, so that's where I am. Okay, thank you so much for being here. And Sherry, just let people know what's on the agenda for next week.
Hey, what's up, Facebook family? Power to the people. This is Sherry Sherrill from the Red, Black, and Green Issues. And if you are interested in what we're interested in, which is community, please keep tuning in on Wednesdays at 7:30. It's an hour-long program. If you know anyone or you yourself would like to be a guest on the Red, Black, and Green Issues, feel free to go to, until we get our own webpage, Betty Jean Grant's Facebook page, and send her an instant message. You can also text 716-602-5877, or you can text 817-0018. We're community-oriented, community-focused, and community-sourced.
Or they can go to your Facebook page too, right?
My Facebook page is Sherry Sherrill, and it's spelled exactly the way it sounds. SherrySherrill, Sherrill, not Sherrill.
Okay, sounds good.
Power to the people.
Okay, that's good. That's great. And okay, so that's a wrap for today. And we're going to see you next Wednesday at 7:30 on Red, Black, and Green Issues. If you got anything that needs to be talked about between now and Wednesday, give me a call. We might have you on the show next week. If not, we got a topic that you're going to enjoy. And I know I want to stay tuned. And like I always say, I'll see you when I see you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
You're outstanding.
Oh, you. Bless your heart. Thank you.